Good morning. Captain Matt Edward retired here with another one of my, what I hope to be a short broadcast. I'm going to try to keep it 30 minutes or less if I can. However, it's hard to stop when I get going. For example, and I never got a reply back, but of a certain female veteran who joined in 77 to serve till 1985, she just posted that they're going to take in RRSPs when you start taking them at age 65. Now, I didn't mention her by name, but I did tell her that I asked her if she wanted me to put it on my broadcast. Here I am putting it on. Hopefully she doesn't mind. Now, I'm going to drag up the pictures that I posted earlier, and I put them on my Facebook group observation post, and that's my brand, as much as what it is. Here I am talking, and hopefully people will start listening one of these days. So, I'm going to discuss, almost like a reading between the lines episode that I usually do Tuesday and Thursday, I'm going to discuss the Canada Gazette from 2006 again. I had a different topic in mind, but I forgot. I'm a disabled veteran and I got various issues, and whatever idea I had, I promptly forgot. So what I'm going to do now is just going to ad-lib wing it again, sort of. I posted the notes and the slides, that column, on my Facebook group, and I shared them on my own page. Now, when they set up the Canada Gazette in the new Veterans Charter, the Canadian Forces Members and Veterans Re-establishment Act in 2006, they said in the Canada Gazette that Part 2, which was the part about the income replacement benefit, which at the time was called the earnings loss benefit, it was the heart of the new Veterans Charter. Now, I submit that these bastards are heartless, okay? Because they take everything into account. But again, I'm trying not to be looking at the screen, looking away and, ignore the Facebook Live broadcast. But basically, I don't think that they really thought too much about conscience and what's fair, and that people are human. They're not dealing with numbers and statistics. They're not just trying to save money, or they shouldn't be. But what they end up doing is just taking things into account, even though there's absolutely no reason to do it. Now, why I mentioned that is that I was telling Joe, there I go, letting her name slip a bit. Anyway, I was telling her on my reply to her post, and I mean, it's open to all her friends, so it's not exactly like it's a secret. So I was telling her about the J.D. Irving case in New Brunswick Court of Appeal in 2012. And as I speak, I think that was what I was going to do, a listing of, or, a dissertation, a talk on various landmark cases. I'll do that in the future. But the J.D. Irving case in 2012, they were taking the Canada Pension Plan into account and reducing an injured worker's compensation. And they decided, the courts did, that this was wrong, that the worker shouldn't be funding their own disability. So in the same way, a disabled veteran should not be funding their own disability. So the government wants to save at all turns, and it wants to take into account the Canadian Forces pension, the Canada Pension Plan, and now even registered retirement savings plans. Well, it's only natural in my mind that they would try to do it, because they don't seem to be aware of cases like the J.D. Irving case that said you couldn't do it. Now the thing is the government, the provincial government, might have the power to try to overrule property and civil rights. But the federal government doesn't have the right to do it, because under the Constitution Act, Section 9213, they just don't have that jurisdiction. If they don't have the jurisdiction in a certain field, you can't make a law about things in that field. So the provinces can't make laws about the military, and the federal government can't make laws about pensions and insurance and other property and civil rights. So if you have to sue someone for hurting you, you have to do it in the provincial system. You have to go through the courts. You have to prove to a judge that you had a wrong done to you. That's called a tort. Tango, Oscar, Romeo, Tango. So if someone wrongs you, you can sue them, but you have to have damages. Well, the federal government can't outlaw suits in tort because, well, they don't have the jurisdiction. Anyway, without further ado, let me talk about the Canada Gazette in 2006, and I'll look away for a second. I'm going to have to in order to navigate through my Facebook page. So, if you have a look at my Facebook group, it's open. Find observation posts. These days I'm doing these Facebook Live from my home, my regular page. But that's because I put 2,700 people in my Facebook friends list. And what I do is anybody with over 100 mutual friends, I end up making them my friend because I have this message I want to get out. I want people to know that what the government is doing is not legal. What the government is doing is not ethical. What the government is doing is immoral. What the government is doing is what all the other insurance companies across Canada are doing, but that doesn't prove that it's legal. That merely proves that it's popular. So all of the insurance companies across Canada, including the employers which self-employ, are taking things into account to save themselves money. Now that's what you call bias. So when you have people that are willing to put your interest behind their interests, well, you have a dispute because they want to put themselves ahead of you. Now, why should they be able to put yourselves ahead of you? Because I was thinking about doing like, I'm too frugal, right? I was thinking about doing some pictures, printing them off, and then instead of telling you to look at it on my Facebook group. But then it occurred to me, if I looked through my files, I might find some things I ought to get printed. So, how does insurance work? I printed this off. It's showing backwards to me. It's not showing backwards to you, I hope. The insurer can collect premiums from a group of people in similar circumstances, not all of whom will suffer losses in 1 year. You see, insurance wouldn't work if everybody got paid. If everybody got money, then you would collapse the insurance program. These premiums are then pooled together and used by the insurer to pay losses. The insurer doesn't insure per se, it's a group of people in the pool that insure themselves. So you pay the money into the pool, and you're doing it to assist yourself if it happens to you, but it's also to assist the other coworker or other person if you buy it individually on the street. And that's what insurance is. Then they point out that losses are thus shared out among all the policyholders rather than being borne by the unlucky few. Now, you see, that's the reason why I think they're failing to see the point in the new Veterans Charter. And they based it, and I was thinking about what to say, kind of making some mental rehearsals. If you practice things in your head, that's called a mental rehearsal. And I was thinking about things like, well, the new Veterans Charter is welfare. Okay? How can you tell? Well, they based it on the Service Income Support Insurance Program. And that is, income support is what I want you to key in on. So if you base a program called the Earnings Loss Benefit on the Income Support Program through the Department of National Defense, that's a private welfare insurance program that only pays if it has to, and therefore the government was stuck into the same kind of program, and it was thinking it was okay because, well, they got away with it for so many years. For example, what I mean by they got away with it, from 1976 to 2012, after the Dennis Manouche case, it got stopped. But prior to that, the Pension Act pension was paid to a veteran who was injured in service to Canada, and Canada owed a debt of gratitude to that veteran. But the government of Canada, the Department of National Defense, was taking that pension into account and reducing the payment. Now, that should shock you, because it shouldn't happen. If you get a payment of an insurance program that you bought with your premiums, they can't take it into account that you got hurt somewhere else and that you're getting damages to replace what you lost. It's not pain and suffering. I almost spit that out accidentally. Because the government's trying to rewrite history. Just like Donald Trump, if you watch any of that Republican National Convention garbage, I couldn't watch it. It's too sickening. But I've watched comedian shows like Trevor Noah and the Stephen Colbert Show. And even Stephen Colbert had to stop after the second night. It's too sickening to watch these people forget about what's happening, like the hurricanes down the Gulf, and the wildfires in California, and the COVID has 180,000 people dead in the States, which I blame entirely on Trump, because Trump didn't have a national plan. He didn't come up with some kind of national strategy to deal with this. So they screwed the pooch, basically. Anyway, without any more further political commentary, because I'm not getting paid for any of this. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm not getting paid to criticize Trump. I mean, I'm a Canadian. Who cares what I think about Trump? But sometimes I play games online, and the people down there, I tell them that I don't like Trump, and they get right insulted. Like, look, we can like or not like whoever we want. It doesn't make a difference. It's moot. Whether I like Trump or not doesn't matter, because I'm a Canadian, I can't vote. But it makes a big difference what our neighbors to the south, if they ever turned into a dictatorship, don't you think that's our business? Because that's what Trump wants. Trump wants to be a dictator. Anyway, on the first picture, okay, I put it in different boxes. The purple box up top, I'll forget about that because right now I don't have the previous page. When I put these on my Facebook page, I had them in a certain order. But in the red box where I numbered 1, they talked about the policy objective of the new Veterans Charter. Well, the part two of the new Veterans Charter, where they said was the heart of the program. The policy objective is to relieve the financial pressures upon those who are participating in a rehabilitation program. Now, the Canada Pension Plan Disability introduced a voluntary rehabilitation program, I think in 1998. Think about that. It's voluntary. How come the citizens that are disabled in Canada can have a voluntary rehabilitation program, but when they create a new Veterans Charter program in 2006 for the veterans who were disabled in Canada's service in a war, how come they made that mandatory? Now I allege a very serious allegation that is a breach of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Section 2, freedom, right? Freedom of conscience, freedom of choice. We should be able to do what we want, and they shouldn't be able to say you're not getting money unless you're participating. That's the way I see it. Now, nobody has challenged them yet. I'm trying to make it a court of public opinion. My videos are designed to alert the public, alert veterans, and alert the families of veterans, the friends of veterans, and friends of soldiers, and families of soldiers, and let people know about what's happening, to try to get the politicians to fix it and not make us go to court again. Why should we have to sue the government that we serve? It's absurd. Now, moving on. They said if the veteran, they said that it's in order to increase the chances of success. What a load of garbage, okay? If I was doing a reading between the line episode, which this kind of is, I'd say they're trying to say that the public policy objective of this program is to give you money while you're in a program in order to have a chance of success. Well, how about looking at it from the viewpoint of the veteran? If you get injured in service, you're entitled, not eligible, for a payment of compensation for your personal injury in service. Now, under the Pension Act, you were entitled. That word was used a lot in the Act. But when they did the new Veterans Charter in 2006, they used the word eligible. Now, I view that as a watering down. Okay, if you choose certain words to put into a law. If someone's entitled to it, I think you would, hit like if you think that entitled is a better word for a veteran deserving compensation instead of eligible, which I think implies that they can say no. Okay, so I think that they watered down the new Veterans Charter on purpose. They didn't want people to think they had an entitlement. They wanted people to think that you only get things when the government decides to give it to you. That's my opinion, but it's based on the facts, based on the Canada Gazette. So they said that it was for 2 years at first. So while you're into rehabilitation, now the implication is that rehabilitation is only 2 years. You see? Because they say that after 2 years, once you're determined to be totally and permanently incapacitated, you're supposed to get the earnings loss benefit. That was what they called the new income replacement benefit. That's what they renamed it in 2016. You were supposed to get it to age 65 if you were determined to be totally and permanently incapacitated. Now, how did they try to figure out if you were totally and permanently incapacitated? They had to look at your ability to work. And if they looked at your ability to work and you couldn't do a job that was equal to 66.67% of your old salary, then you were considered to be totally and permanently incapacitated. And that was an important designation because you're supposed to get, if you were determined to be TPI, you're supposed to get the ELB till age 65. You're supposed to get a thing called the Permanent Impairment Allowance, which is awarded in 3 grades. Grade 1, or I don't know which it is, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, but the first one is $500 a month. Second one is $1,000 a month, and third one is $1,500 a month. Now, the other one, at the time in 2006, was called the Supplementary Retirement Benefit, which was a lump sum payable at age 65, and it was paid based on the gross earnings loss benefit and or SISIP, Service Income Support Insurance Plan. Now, in 2011, in Bill C-55, they brought up the Permanent Impairment Allowance Supplement because they were responding to people complaining about there not being enough compensation to veterans. They added an additional payment. And then Minister of Veterans Affairs Jean-Pierre Blackburn got on the Parliament view, and I'm going to look for a video of him doing that later, but I have the written record where he says that a seriously disabled veteran will get at least $58,000. Now, what he was doing was adding up the earnings loss benefit, which was $42,000 a year maximum at that time. Then he added to it the permanent impairment allowance. That's $18,000, $1,500 a month. But I think he just used the lower ones there because, you know, if you add up 42 and 18, that's 60 right there. And that's over what he said. And then the permanent impairment allowance supplement was an extra $1,000. Now that's another $12,000. So what he should have said is that we're going to give you $72,000, and I don't like that word give. I shouldn't have used it. They should have said they should have paid the compensation in relation to the injury that the veteran was entitled to. And they're not giving them anything. They earned it in service. They earned it by getting injured. So, so they said in that red paragraph that I highlighted, they said that you're going to get it till age 65 of your TPI. That's if you can't work, if you're unemployable, they say. That's a very important point. Now, moving on to the program delivery, the second item that I highlighted in the green box, it says, as this program ensures income replacement. Now, think about this. In 2019, the government, 2017, it was announced in December of 2017. Hear my dog barking in the background? Clara. I don't know why she's barking. Anyway, back in 2017, Minister of Veterans Affairs, Seamus O'Regan, my member of Parliament, got on TV in December. I think it was December 22nd or December 20th. Why did they announce that just before Christmas? It was crazy. They announced that they're bringing in this new pension for life, and they're going to fix everything by renaming the programs that are already there. Now, I submit to the viewer, the few that I see are watching, that if you only change the name of something that was already in existence, you didn't change anything. And I was very disappointed and upset with my Minister of Veterans Affairs and Member of Parliament, because they're faking us out. They're deceiving us. It's a huge fraud. I mean, I saw on the TV down in the States, they had a We Build the Wall thing, and then they committed fraud by not actually building the wall with the $25 million in donations, and Steve Bannon and 2 other people have been charged for fraud. And I think the government is defrauding us by calling things something that it is not. What is something new? Not the old stuff with new names. So if you have the earnings loss benefit, and I can prove that with that document I just mentioned, they said, as this program ensures income replacement. Now, the government had the ability to call earnings loss benefit income replacement benefit in 2006. So who do they think they're fooling when they put it in their own Canada Gazette and they call it the same thing they called it in 2019? Right? So that's my point. Now, they say that they're going to try to offset all the other forms of income. They bring up the Pension Act. Well, the Pension Act is not income. This new Veterans Charter was brought in 6 years before the Dennis Manouz class action lawsuit was finished. Now, because they based the earnings loss benefit on the Service Income Support Insurance Plan, when the government lost on the Department of National Defense Service Income Support Plan being allowed to take into account the Pension Act pension, then that meant Veterans Affairs had to stop it too. Now, there are idiots, I can't call them anything else, but idiots, who believed that it was legal because until they repealed the law, it was the law and they were following the law. Excuse me, but that's not how the law works. If you have 2 programs and one is based on the other one gets sued in court and then lose, you can't very well say that until we repeal that law that allows us to take into account the Pension Act, that it's legal. If it was legal, they wouldn't have repealed it. That's obvious. However, they decided to only award 4 months retroactivity to the Veterans Affairs payment when the Department of National Defense went back 36 years. Now, I don't think there's very many veterans on the program for 36 years. It might have been a symbolic gesture. But they went back, in theory, 36 years to fix this because 36 years it started. 36 years ago it started. So what happened was, the background, if I didn't say it to you before, if you're tuning in now and didn't catch it before, back in 1976, they were looking at the award of the Pension Act pension, and it was usually between 20 and 30% on the average. And they said that you couldn't live on that. You didn't have very high quality of life if you couldn't work. but you weren't getting very much money. So they decided to allow the Service Income Support Insurance Plan, which is a non-indemnity. I'm always repeating this, hoping it will stick in. Non-indemnity and contributory. Non-indemnity means it doesn't compensate for anything. Contributory means it's bought. So this is an insurance that you bought, and it doesn't compensate you for anything, including income loss. So then they decided to allow the pension plus SISIP. Now, that goes against a thing called the Bradburn Rule. The Bradburn Rule says you can get your insurance plus your indemnity, your compensation, and it doesn't offend any legal principles. So my point is the government brought in something that was illegal in the common law and then expected everybody to believe it was okay. And then they got told off by the judge, Justice Robin Burns. I've done so much research into this, it's coming out of my ears. Anyway, so the Pension Act was one of the ones listed here. One of the other ones was employment income at the rate of 50%. Now, this is another thing, and I'm kind of going to go all over the place. That's the nature of the beast. That's Matt Edwards doing these observation post videos. I have a huge problem, and I asked the minister and the deputy minister about this in August of 2018, about the $20,000 income exemption that they're allowing people. And I cut out the clip and put it on my Facebook videos and audio group, okay? It's called Observation Post : videos and audio. So I've divided all my groups into that, and I put in a short clip of about 2 minutes where I asked the deputy minister and the minister about where did they come up with this. And the deputy minister, General Tinchuk, who I respect, I've read a lot of his material in various sources like the Senate Committee on National Defense and Veterans Affairs or whatever, and I've seen on the record things that he's gone to bat for soldiers and veterans. I respect the man, but I didn't like the answer. He said that they called around to the various provinces, which I presume is the workers' compensation. They asked what is the amount that you could make without any clawbacks, and they said $20,000 was the most generous, so they went with that. Now, workers' compensation is a property and civil right, and the government, the federal government, asked what the provinces do, and then copied it. No, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to try to assume that you had the jurisdiction. You're supposed to check with other programs. You're supposed to make sure that you're doing the right thing. Because I mentioned the fact that they're probably outside their lane. They're not staying in their lane. They're in the provincial lane. But you could have made more while you're in a rehabilitation program under the old rules than the new rules. Now, when you're making a law, you shouldn't make a law that might be detrimental to you. You're supposed to be progressive. You're supposed to do what the Interpretation Act, Section 12, I think, maybe it's Section 13, says that you have to interpret a law to give it broad and generous effect so that it achieves its purpose. So if the new Veterans Charter is supposed to compensate veterans, you're not supposed to, make rules up that could penalize some veterans. So if you were working and making $150,000, $100,000 a year, then you'd have half of that money clawed back. But now, they only allow you 20. Half of 150 is 75, half of 100 is 50. So you would have been better off if you left the law alone. So why did they change it? That's my point. Why did they change it if they just think that they can tell us something that's good? Because I think that it sounds good on the surface. I mean, when I heard about it, it took me a little while, probably a half hour, before I started to figure it out that this is bullshit. But until somebody tells them this is bullshit, they're not changing the law for the better, they're changing the law for the worse. Anyway, moving on, or I could be talking all day giving you my editorial opinion. Disability pension benefits under the Pension Act. We know that changed after they repealed the law. Benefits payable under the Canadian Forces Superannuation Act. That might be justifiable. I'd say no, because it's property, not income. But the second part, the Public Service Superannuation Act. Now, this is my situation, okay? If I was ever approved for their earnings loss benefit or income replacement benefit, they'd look at me and they'd try to say that they had to take into account my Public Service Superannuation Act. And then I'd give them the middle finger and I'd say, go fuck yourself. Sun Life takes it into account first, and unless you get them to stop, you can't take it into account twice, you son of a bitch. Okay? Now, they would try to say we had to act according to the law, and I'd say, do you have the right to have this information? Under the Privacy Act, I'm supposed to have the right to privacy. You are not supposed to ask about things that's not your business. The Canadian Forces Pension Act, I could see some kind of link because you had to be a soldier before you become a veteran. But go fuck yourself sideways if you think that my public service pension plan is any of your fucking business. Okay? It's not. No. But it's hypothetical in my case. There might be veterans out there. There's a veteran in Edmond. Let me tell you his story. Might have told you before. He went to Afghanistan in 2006, developed PTSD after his service over there, ended up getting booted out of the military under medical release, kicked out of CRA because he was disabled with PTSD, losing both jobs. Then he got the Sun Life like I got, and then he got the Canada Pension like I got. And he's a reservist like me. Now, when they were looking at deducting the Canada Pension Plan from the various insurances, because he gets Sun Life and he was getting Manulife, Sun Life left him alone, and Manulife deducted 100%. Now, I view his example, but in reverse, as fair in my case. But Manulife is insisting on getting 100% of my Canada Pension Plan, and they are, like, not 100%, 50%. So they deduct 50%, 100%. Sun Life deducted 100%, and I was getting damaged by them abusing me for the Canada Pension Plan. Now, get this. I didn't even fucking, I couldn't get it legally. You had to have 4 out of 6. I had 4 out of 7. I was shit out of luck. They sent me a letter on the 26th of July, 2013. They informed me on my 3rd application to it that I didn't meet the legal requirements. So how the fuck did I get it then? I would use the case of 20AUG20. Served from 77 to 2004, 27 years. In 2016, CISIP Manulife ordered him to get the Canada Pension Plan. I was talking to him a lot. I'm trying to help him on the alleged $137,000 they said he owes. Based on the stuff I was telling him, he told them to go fuck themselves sideways. Now, they cut him off. Because he told them to go to hell, they cut him off. So that's their way of putting pressure on us. Now, after they finally got the message that, that dog wouldn't hunt about, because he was out, okay, let me explain why. He got out in 2004, and by the time they asked him to apply for Canada Pension Plan, 12 years had elapsed. Because of the 4 to 6 year rule, he couldn't legally get it. They couldn't put their hopes on forcing that issue. So then they turned around and said he didn't have a doctor. So because he didn't have a doctor, they said they were going to cut him off. Again, I cry foul. The long-term disability plan that the Army has shouldn't be doing this to disabled veterans, especially when they were part of the CISIP class action first, especially when they're disabled in service, because a regular force person can get CISIP if you're hurt in or out of service. Unlike a reservist. Like a reservist has to be injured in service because of Section 41A3 of the policy. So I want that gone out of the policy. It's not fair. Why should it treat a disabled reservist different than a disabled regular force person? Something the government admitted in 2015 when it changed the rules of compensation under the Veterans Wellbeing Act. Now, all of this, okay, get down. Amounts payable in respect of economic loss of a legal liability to pay damages. What the hell are they smoking? Okay? Tort damages are provincial under the law, and you cannot put a federal law into effect that says if you get economic damages, we're going to take it into account. Let me explain why. You're entitled to, under the compensation principle, 100% of your loss, but not 1 red cent more. They're trying to say that the ELB is a form of compensation and they want to take into account the compensation payable in a lawsuit. But the Pension Act didn't do that. The Pension Act only took 50% if it was related to the exact same event. Now, even there, the government fucked up because they put a second clause in there that said if you're suing the government and you succeed, they'll take 100% off. Now, I would say that's stupid and fucking stupid because the Crown Liabilities and Proceedings Act, Section 9, says you can't sue the government for an injury in the military. So then why did they make that law that said they're going to claw back 100% of it? It's absurd. Okay, so, if we're ever going through and trying to fix things, I'd tell them that they had to repeal that law because it makes no sense. right? Why would you make law that makes no sense? Then you have people like me saying, that only proves the government's stupid, and if the government is stupid, then why are we having people that are ruling us that are fucking stupid? We want people that are competent ruling us. We give them the power. That's the way a democracy works. We gave them voluntarily the right to administer, rule over us, but it's supposed to be reasonably, you see? So the part about the pension is unreasonable. Pension Act, Section 30, it says that you can't do it. The common law, the Bradburn Rule, says you can't do it. The taking into account the pension under SISP is wrong because a non-indemnity payment can't take anything into account. A non-indemnity payment has to pay, and that's it. It can't claw back, nor can it be clawed back. Now, that's a very important principle. Let me repeat that. A non-indemnity payment, like the Canada Pension Plan, like the Canadian Forces Pension, like the SISP program, cannot claw back, nor can it be clawed back. So Veterans Affairs thinks that it can take into account the Service Income Support Insurance Plan. It didn't put it into law, though. It didn't put it into the Veterans Wellbeing Act regulations. Only someone like me with obsessive-compulsive personality disorder would probably notice that. Little nuanced details like they forgot to put it in there. Maybe they took it for granted. But what they did do after the Manouche case was they passed a policy. A policy is not binding. A law is binding. A policy is not binding. And they said that they prescribed the Service Income Support Insurance Plan as a clawback under the earnings loss benefit. But that brings into the question, if they're allowed to claw back, then who claws back who? Is it the Service Income Support Insurance Plan will claw back the value of the earnings loss benefit? Or is it the earnings loss benefit clawing back the value of SISP? You see how messy they make it when they should just keep it simple. You should get the insurance you paid for, in addition to your compensation for your personal injury that resulted from the event that caused the injury, because that's what the pension does. Okay? Now, primary benefits under the Canada Pension Plan or the Quebec Pension Plan. Now, because they're being such jerks to us, I'll bring up a point that could be used in a court of law. Do they mean the payment that's only payable to the veteran, or do they mean the earnings-related amount? Because the Canada Pension Plan disability is made up of two things. First, 75% of the economic rate that you would have got. Secondly, a flat rate, which is about $500. So if you're going to get $1 on the economic side, you get $501 at the end of the month. Now, I recently told many people, where is the public policy, the public interest, in allowing companies that are doing insurance or the government, when it takes into account, to take the flat rate that the government put there to help the disabled? Now, where's the justice there? Like, my Canada Pension Plan disability has $500 that's related to the flat rate, designed to help the disabled, but the Department of National Defense Insurance took it into account. So there's one time I lost my flat rate, and then the the Sun Life policy for the Treasury Board took it into account. So now, instead of the flat rate helping me, it's hurting me twice. Okay, that's my form of double dip clawback that I've been telling people about. Anyway, moving on to the last point there that in that page, because I want to get this done. I don't want to be on the air. Benefits under any employer-sponsored long-term disability program. Okay, that's not the one I was talking about. Oh, no, but they say the same thing. Or any provincial workers' comp act. Listen, you can't do that. The provincial workers' comp have laws, like the Ontario Workers' Comp Act, might be called the Workplace Safety, whatever, Insurance Board, or whatever it is. Section 64 says no one may set off against these benefits. Now, I submit that if the government wrote that into the various Canadian Forces Pension Act, the Pension Act, the Canada Pension Plan Act, instead of saying that no one may seize this in law or equity, the provincial workers' comp, in Ontario at least, they use different words in Quebec, they use different ones in Alberta and BC. I only looked up 4 or 5 provinces. So in Quebec they say this payment is inalienable. Now, inalienable means that nobody can touch it. Now, that's the same words that they used in the National Defense Act for the non-public property, which is SISP. So I allege that the policy that Veterans Affairs follows, that they brought in after the Manouche case, is actually, again, contrary to, they're violating Section 39(3) of the National Defense Act, which says that non-public property is inalienable. The Quebec Workers' Compensation Board. Now, I'm going to move on to the other one, or I'll be here all day. Something we all don't want. On the next page, they talk about compliance and enforcement. I submit there's no need to have a compliance and enforcement on a Compensation Act. Why would you need compliance and enforcement on a program where you're supposed to be repaying the debt that you owed someone because they got hurt? That's compensation for injury. You see? So I firmly believe that they don't understand and they think they're giving us welfare. That is one of my prime suppositions. Okay? So they income test via clawback. Let me explain. The government has income test benefits. Okay? Something like the Canada children's amount. Whatever you want. What was it? Canada child tax benefit or something. Anyway, all of these different income tested benefits is a form of tax because it saves on the way that the government spends the taxes it already has collected. So when the government says to a disabled veteran, we're not going to pay you when you're already getting money from all your savings, all your pensions, all your money you saved up during your career, we're not going to pay you. They're acting like a welfare agency, and they're not paying you because you have enough money to pay for your own self. I mean, it's absurd. You wouldn't be applying for something through Veterans Affairs unless you're injured in service. So basically, it's a complete reversal of what the Pension Act was, because the Pension Act was property of the veteran. I know that from reading of William F. Nicol, one of the designers of the pension back in 1916, when they were talking over what to have. And they asked him about, the pension, can they claw it back or something? And he said, of course not. Once it's awarded, I think he put a caveat there, but he said once the pensioner is awarded the pension, it is their property. We are not going to follow them around and make sure that they attend Sunday school, which I took to mean as they're not going to make sure that they don't piss it all away by drinking it away or smoking dope or something. It's their business what they do with their property, right? Now the government wants us to do the right thing, so they think the right thing is to, take that disability award, that lump sum payment, and invest it, which I say go fuck yourself. If a veteran, having suffered an injury in service, wants to buy something out of the pain and suffering award, that's their business and not the government's business. Anyway, moving on to the second point, the green box. It's called financial benefits, entitled financial benefits. Now, first of all, and I didn't make this up before, I'm just saying it on the fly. Where is the financial benefit? Okay, Peel Regional Supreme Court of Canada said that you can have a positive and a negative benefit. You can have a positive benefit where you receive money, or you can have a negative benefit where you don't have to spend money. Well, they're benefiting. We're not benefiting. If they pay to us money, but they only pay if we don't have other money in the bank, then they're the ones benefiting, not us. A benefit, and this has been bugging me. This is one of my triggers. So benefit. What is something to your benefit? Something to your advantage. Money is normally to your advantage. So in that Peel case, they call that an incontrovertible benefit. But it's not really an incontrovertible benefit. If you get money in relation to your injury, you're really getting a debt repaid back to you. So that's submitted into the both acts, in the Pension Act and the new Veterans Charter, the Veterans Wellbeing Act. It says that it's recognizing the debt that Canada owes to the veteran. So if you're getting money that's paid back to you because you suffered injury in Canadian military service, you are not getting income, you are not getting a benefit, you're getting a debt repayment. Delta, Echo, Bravo, Tango. A debt repayment. And I wasn't pausing for dramatic effect. That OCPD is brutal honesty. I couldn't remember the word for a second, so I paused to try to recall it. If you get a payment where someone owes you money and they repay you, how the fuck can you call that income? It beats me. But they want to call it income. I'll refer back to the 1982 tax court return change. They decided to put workers' compensation on the tax return only for income-tested benefits. See, I brought it back to the income-tested benefits, which we have here. Now, I had a very nasty thought the other day, and I'll share it to the viewer. under the Pension Act, because there's no T4A, because there's no T4 5007, no tax information slip is issued, then a Pension Act pensioner can get income-tested benefits because there's no income to report. But in 2006, when the government brought in the new Veterans Charter, all of a sudden they saved on income-tested benefits. Everybody's always talking about clawbacks, including me, and other things like tax. And then it struck me that they're saving indirectly because they put the money on the tax return as income, but before, under the Pension Act, they couldn't. So I think somebody ought to investigate that. Maybe that's a good subject for the Office of the Veterans Ombudsman. And I called them and I discussed that very briefly with them. I don't want to be talking all day to them, although I sometimes do. I spoke to one lady last week for 2 hours and 20 minutes. It was venting mostly, but I expect them to do their job. I don't expect much from them because, well, they have no teeth. They can't order it. But you know, there's a certain value to exposing something. So if somebody did an investigation, and I probably could if I was a bit healthier, to find out what were the indirect costs to the veteran because their children's child tax benefit, or whatever you want to call it, they keep changing the names of programs. But what is the indirect cost to the veteran when you compare the Pension Act to the new Veterans Charter and the income-tested benefits? Now, one of the things I plan to call CRA on is to ask them, what are the current income-tested benefits that, you know, this would be relevant to? Because there are other, like, okay, old age is an income-tested benefit. It's an income-tested benefit since 1989, and Brian Mulroney violated the rules, I think, because Canada has a public policy of having 3 things for retirement: Canada Pension Plan, old age, and your regular pension or savings. So when they brought in an income-tested benefit in the old age, when they converted it from a non-income-tested benefit to an income-tested benefit, they were really going back in time, by the way. The old age payment, it might be news to you, I think it was means tested. Now, means tested is even worse than income testing. Let me explain. There are 2 ways the government can save money when paying welfare. One is income testing, which is less intrusive than means testing. Means testing takes into account your assets and your income. Income only takes into account your income. Now, I submit that you cannot use either for a disabled veteran hurt in service. You want to do that for someone who's poor because they're down on their luck in between jobs, or they're mentally disabled and they're on some social assistance program. You go right ahead. Don't you fucking dare try to tell a veteran that you are not going to get a payment because you got too much money in the bank. Think about that. Think about how fucking absurd this stupid goddamn system is, and I'm getting triggered here now thinking about it. To say to someone who took their life in limb and put it in jeopardy, something that civilians do not understand. I think the cave analogy that a philosophy fellow said, I don't remember who, but the understanding I have is everybody's in a cave, chained down, and they're looking at the shadows flickering on the wall from a fire. Then one of them gets away, goes outside, sees the sunshine, the beautiful grass, all that stuff, and then goes back in and tries to tell the other people about what they're missing. But they can't understand because they have no frame of reference, because all they know is the shadows flickering on the wall, and that person can't convey to them what he saw. Now, this is what's happening, I think. People don't seem to get it. Civilians see the world a certain way. Military people see the world another way. You got to keep things simple in the military. I'm not saying that soldiers are stupid, but back in World War II, I mean, I have this vast knowledge. I mean, I just am a history buff and stuff. They used to make these guidebooks for the Panther, the Panzerkampfwagen 5, sometimes it's called, or the Tiger, Panzerkampfwagen 6. And they made them in cartoon format because that would be easier to get across the training. Right? So these are ways to get across things to people, to make them understand. Right? So basically, we see things differently. The military mind sees things differently than the civilian mind. And the government thinks that everybody's the same. And many people falsely believe, and I'm getting down the rabbit hole a bit, but down a different path, a different direction the train of thought is taking. Some people believe that it's the best way to treat people fair is to treat everybody equally. But that isn't the case. Sometimes if you treat everybody the same, it could be the highest form of discrimination because everybody's not the same. Some people have special needs. And I hate to use that word because the government often used this needs, like in the new Veterans Charter. I'll discuss it in a minute. They said that there was going to be two gateways to the new Veterans Charter. There was going to be the needs-based gateway, and they put that first, so I think that was their main goal. And then there was going to be the medical release gateway. Now, you come in under one of the two different gateways. I think they put the needs gateway first because the service income support insurance plan is automatic on medical release. So unless somebody proves to me I'm wrong, I think that's why they put the needs-based one first for Veterans Affairs. That they had a program arrangement in place, and under the program arrangement, the Service Income Support Insurance Plan pays first, and then Veterans Affairs takes it into account according to the program arrangement. So I think they thought that the people on CISP had nothing to worry about, so they made the needs-based one the Veterans Affairs main goal. If you don't agree, make a comment, but I think that makes sense. Anyway, moving on. They then said, as stated earlier, financial benefits under Part 2 to compensate for economic impacts of injury resulting primarily from service. Primarily is something that gets me going because what the hell do they mean? It's open to interpretation. Or leading to a medical release. Now that was my point, okay? I have this big problem back in 2012 when I was awarded the rehabilitation program, but I never got the earnings loss benefit to go with it. I got a letter dated 15th November 2012 from Veterans Affairs, and they said, you were medically released. You told us you don't get CISP. In other words, I'm a liar. Now, what they didn't take into account is that a reservist doesn't get CISP on medical release. It's even stated in here, and I'll probably get it in one of them other boxes, we were excluded, okay? So certain classes were excluded from the new Veterans Charter. Class A, Class B reservists were excluded. They call us a prescribed class. Now that changed later, but you know what? I think a lot of what's happened to me is because at the time I was one of the excluded people, but they awarded it to me anyway. When I told the manager at VAC that, he sounded kind of shocked that the case manager had approved me for rehabilitation when I said, you know, I'm supposed to be one of those excluded groups. I don't understand how I got it. The government makes stupid rules. That's what it comes down to. They should not have excluded the Reserve Force veteran back in 2006. I don't know when they changed it, but I don't think they do it the same way now because in 2015 they said it's inequitable to compensate a disabled part-time veteran different than a disabled full-time veteran. Now you would think that would apply to being in the programs as well as the amount of money you get. But as I said, that's a new thought for me. Maybe it's not true. In fact, I did a minister's own motion. I have another exhibit here that I decided to put up here. If you can't read it, well, upside down? No? Okay. This is a consent form. Now, Veterans Affairs, when I told them I wanted to have a minister's own motion on my situation, I wanted them to change their mind and reverse course and give me the compensation I'm entitled to. They hung their hat on I didn't fill in a consent form. Now, at a later date, I found a consent form from the CISP program under the Department of National Defense. Now, I submit to you, the viewer, that if I filled out a form on the 19th of April 2011 for the Department of National Defense insurance program, and it was a blanket consent letting them talk to anybody, then I didn't need to fill out the Veterans Affairs form. That makes sense? No, I think it does. But you know, on the date, I signed this, and I'm getting a bit flustered, I guess, and my eyes are not the best, on the November the 20th, 2012. Now, they say they don't have it on file. Why would I fill it out and sign it and date it if I didn't send it to them properly by fax? Now, if I fax that to them and they lost it, that's their problem, not my problem. If I was going to tell them to go fuck themselves, I would not have filled it out. Now, there are people out there that are probably saying, well, he could be just saying that now, trying to cover things up. Well, do some kind of forensic investigation on it. Look at the ink or something, or do carbon dating or something, and I'll show that I'm fucking telling the truth. These sons of bitches want us to provide a consent form from everybody, almost every year sometimes. It's actually illegal. under the Privacy Act, you're not supposed to collect too much information. Now, if I provided a consent form to D&D and it covers everything, including VAC, there's no need for me to fill out a second consent form. Now, their program arrangement says that, we're going to follow the same consent forms that we always do, and they're basically saying we're going to ignore the Privacy Act. If they have a consent form accepted at the Department of National Defense, and they have a program arrangement which integrates these two programs, I submit that the one consent form is enough. And they cannot have their cake and eat it too, and say that we have to fill out the Veterans Affairs one too, or else. That's a technicality. They should be more worried about trying to serve the veteran instead of worrying about their goddamn forms. Make sense? I think it does. Anyway, they talked about, I'm going to move on because I'll be here all day. Earnings lost. They said that they were going to mirror CISIP. Now, think about that. They said they were going to mirror CISIP as closely as possible. But in 2017 and 2019, when they brought in the pension for life, all of a sudden they're saying that the CISIP plan doesn't matter anymore. They're not going to use it. Now, I submit that that's because they plan to make CISIP payable only for non-duty injuries. And because it's going to be payable for only non-duty injuries, Veterans Affairs has nothing to do with it on paper, because they only serve veterans who have been injured in service. Now, the problem with that is insurance has to be paid no matter what. They're violating insurance law when they do that. Now, I've been trying to tell the government, I told the Deputy Minister, I told the Veterans Ombudsman, I told many members of Parliament, many senators. Okay, I see people that are watching that I know had nothing to do with the military. Now think about the optics of saying that the Service Income Support Insurance Plan, which is administered by Manulife, a large and profitable insurance company, and they say that from now on, CISIP will not pay for a duty injury. But from now on, the government of Canada will have to pay through the earnings loss benefit, the income replacement benefit. So why is the government of Canada giving a huge subsidy to Manulife? Because before, they were the first payer on medical release, whether it was related to service or not. So there's going to be a huge savings to them, because now, instead of there being a payment from Veterans Affairs and CISIP to 90%, because CISIP will not pay for duty injuries anymore, then Veterans Affairs will have to pay the whole bill. Now, why is Canada subsidizing Manulife? Now, I think we can beat this down their throats. Why does Canada feel it can subsidize Manulife? Why isn't it subsidizing the other insurance companies? Can it subsidize Manulife? Can they make CISIP only payable for a non-duty injury? Now, some people might know about a thing called the war exclusion clause. I saw this a few times in the various references I've been reading. Ask yourself this: how can a program of insurance designed for soldiers who are training to fight war or fighting an actual war, how can you look at them with a straight face and say we're going to pay not pay you if you get injured in that war because there's a war exclusion clause? Why did they even bother? Right? So to me, that's a red herring. They're just throwing it in there to make people think that, you can't get CISIP because you got injured in war. Nothing's further from the truth. During the research that I've been doing, I saw that many people took out insurance policies just before they went to World War I or World War II. Now, if there was such a thing as you can't get insurance because you got killed or injured in war, then why did those people buy their insurance then? Right? I mean, I think that proves my point. Anyway, moving on, because I don't want to be here all day. People think that I like to talk, and I hate it. My eyes are going blurry already. I don't even know if I can read the screen here. I think I got to go make a new eye prescription, get new bifocals. On the next one, page 1, benefits. In the red box, I think it's red. Apart from fulfilling the societal obligation to help those who have developed health problems as a result of service, a social benefit is gained by assisting them to become more independent and productive citizens. Now, there's a lot to unpack in that one sentence. Are they talking about the societal obligation to repay the veteran for their injury in service? Or are they talking about the social welfare idea that you can't have disabled people starving to death? Which one? I think we deserve an answer, right? Which one is it? In 1997, the federal government and the provinces came to an agreement that the federal government would not make any more laws in the social welfare field. Now that was 9 years before the new Veterans Charter, which they say is social welfare. Now, if you violate a principle that, the governments is like a contract, the governments of the federal government and the provincial government got together and they said, listen, hands off social welfare stuff. I mean, I don't know. I think I know, but nobody has taken them to task. Why didn't the provinces take them to task? Because they're saving money too. Think about it. If the feds pay, they don't have to pay. So even though they came to an agreement and said that they shouldn't do it, I think the pragmatic point that if the veterans get their money from Ottawa, they're not getting the money from us, and then the province has never kicked up a stink. That's my theory. Now, footnote number 2. It is estimated through an analysis of the existing clientele that in the first year there would be 767 Canadian Forces veterans with a rehabilitation need. That reinforces my point about the medical release being automatic and CISIP first. Right? Now, the vocational rehabilitation cost per client is estimated to be $3,836 in the first year, which contains a prudent safety margin. That drives me, right? Okay, a prudent safety margin. They say as the comparable costs for CISIP and for similar programs provided in Australia and the US were lower. The total cost is estimated to be $2.9 million in the first year, of which 90% represents an investment in education, blah, blah, blah. But then they say in point number 3 that I footnoted, the cost for vocational rehabilitation doubles in the second year to $6 million. The number of clients doubles with the new entrants releasing from active service. So this is again proven what I say to be true. Okay? So they made a plan to piggyback on top of the CISIP program. It's a form of leeching. It's a form of fraud. You can't defraud the soldier of their insurance they're supposed to get and say that they're not going to get it because they're getting it. You're not going to get the earnings loss benefit. That's stupid. It is stupid and illegal. It goes against common sense. It would harm the insurance industry. Okay, here's my rationale. Bear with me because I'm going to go fast. If people didn't get the insurance that they got, then they'd talk to their friends. Then they wouldn't buy insurance. All the people in society wouldn't buy insurance. If they didn't buy insurance, we wouldn't need people to sell it. If you don't need people to sell it, you don't need insurance adjusters. If you don't need insurance adjusters and people to sell it, you don't need people that administer the payments. You don't need people to deduct the taxes and send it to the government. And you don't need the government won't need getting as much tax revenue because it's screwing us over on the taxes, even though it shouldn't be taxed. They are taxing. So in effect, the insurance industry is harming itself by doing clawbacks. Because nobody will buy something if they don't get anything. Why would you piss away your money in a premium if you didn't get any money out of it? It's fucking stupid. It's against public policy, it's against the law, it's against all kinds of stuff, but they're actually harming their own insurance industry. Now, I got an answer to that too. The insurance industry never got to sell many long-term disability policies, so they decided not to bother. And then the employers of Canada stepped in and started to sell them, and then they hired the insurance companies to administer them. But they don't actually insure them, they only administer them. Now, the one who saves with clawbacks is the employer, not the insurer. Now, you heard it from me first, maybe. You might have read it somewhere else. Administrative services only policies are called. Okay, so you have a policy of insurance that appears to be a policy of insurance, but really, the employer's paying it. So you get the money from Manulife, Sun Life, Great West Life, or National Insurance, but the money really comes from the government of Canada. Now, I submit that is what you call a sham transaction, according to a case I read about 1983, some case about taxes. And they said that a transaction, a business transaction which serves no purpose, no rational purpose, is a sham transaction. Now, it's usually done to fill the tax man, right? And I think this is related to taxes. Okay, I think that the government makes the payment to the veteran. The payment is listed as being paid by Manulife. Manulife then reduces its profit, and then it saves on the T2 corporate tax return that it files because you only pay taxes as a corporation on the profit you make. So you have a payment by some other entity. It's listed as your payment, that means you have a payment that you can deduct, and therefore the government of Canada loses out on the taxes. Now, civilians out there, you get a hold of your member of parliament. Veterans out there, you get a hold of your member of parliament, and you say, enough of this shit. I don't even know if it's a coincidence. Do the insurance companies that administer the employer's payments, do they realize that they get this huge break on corporate taxes? Or is it a coincidence? I don't know, but somebody needs to investigate. Anyway, the thing about all this stuff is, I'm going to go on to the next page, but I'm getting sick of this. I've already been talking, Jesus Christ, have I been talking an hour already? Oh, my nerves. I'm going to try to get through it real fast, okay? Next page, number 1, the program will fill in gaps. Now, gaps. You hear that word a lot for veterans. Who wrote the program? Who designed the program? Who designed the program that left a gap? If you're designing a program to fill a gap, you're fixing something that you fucking fixed. You should have fixed by designing it right. Point number 2. Same thing as before, basically, about the social and vocational, right? No, actually, my mistake. They were talking about social cycle rehabilitation, which was the one I was talking about. But they're saying the policy extends to the common law partner and survivors. Now, they make that sound good. I think they copied, and this one is for the widows that I've been trying to help, Joan Carbage from Belle Island, Laroque. How do they think they can get away with this shit? Under the Service Income Support Insurance Plan in Part 2, or Division 2 or something, there's a thing called a Survivor Income Benefit. Now, to the best of my knowledge, and I consider myself, don't think that I'm egotistical, the foremost expert in this stuff, I don't think anybody ever gets it. So they put into the policy, and at the very beginning, because of my research, I know that you had to, in 1969, when the program came in, when you enrolled as a soldier, you had to enroll your wife as well. Now, they have a program where after the veteran on SISIP dies, they're supposed to pay 50% of the insurance to the survivor. I don't think they do it. But I think when they were designing the new veterans charter, they looked at what was on paper, they assumed it happened, and they designed the earnings loss benefit to do the exact same thing. Until someone proves me wrong, that's my theory. Does it make sense to you guys? But unlike SISIP, there are survivors getting money, which is good. But I believe there's a large class action lawsuit that's available to the survivors of people who got killed in service or died after, and then the survivor should have got 50% with no clawbacks, because SISIP is not indemnity, it can't claw back anything. So I would presume that they, even if they approve someone, they'd say, well, you're a zero-sum widow because you have too much money coming in, and you're only getting half of SISIP, and then because it's half of what he was getting, and because you have these clawbacks, you're approved, but we don't have any payment to make. Now that's cruel in my mind. That's absurd in my mind. You can't tell me that's crazy, not crazy. Why would you tell someone that you can approve them? I mean, it reminds me of what happened to me. When I was trying to get my SISIP, they said, well, you get Sun Life policy and you're getting $3,300 a month there, so we're not going to pay you. I said, are you nuts? You can't do that. Neither one insures the other. It'd be different if they did, because then they could argue you're getting paid too much. But because either one is not covering the other one, they're two separate policies. Why would he even try to bring them together? No. Adding to that, years later, many years later, I discovered a thing called the dual remuneration policy that the government has. If you have two positions with the government, I presume one will be full-time, one will be part-time, because you can't serve two masters. You can't have two full-time positions with the government. You can't. So I presume they're talking about a part-time position with a full-time position. If you have two positions with the government, you become disabled. You have two insurance policies, and therefore they put both salaries together and they pay you 70% of the total. Now, think about that. If that was the case, and SISIP screwed me over greatly, because they should have applied the Treasury Board policy, because they're a Treasury Board supported insurance. They should have looked at my CRA salary, they should have looked at my military salary, they should have put two of them together, and they should have paid me 75% of both, and then I wouldn't have got a payment from Sun Life. 75% SISIP pays, Sun Life only pays 70%. Of course it would be the one who has to pay 75%. Now, do you think that they should know about that? I think they should. But the problem is, they've been getting away with this stuff for so long. They try to make us feel like we're the wrongdoer, right? They tell me, as you are aware, you knew about this, and therefore whatever, and they try to make us feel guilty. Listen, insurance is supposed to be to your benefit. I've seen, and I think I'm going to call this quits, I'm getting tired. I might have to restrict my schedule here. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, was what I was doing for the regular broadcast, and Tuesday, Thursday for the other one. But I mean, I'm just getting exhausted, wiped out. Because after I finish, I have my mind whirling around, and then I think of new things. Then I get pissed off enough to call the Veterans Ombudsman again or something. So, anyway, all of this stuff is about greed. That's what it comes down to. Greed. Nothing else but greed. Greed overcoming common sense, greed overcoming the law, greed overcoming the common law, greed overcoming the statutory law. Why did the government bring in all these rules under the pensions? Like they have Canadian Forces Superannuation Act, Section 83 says that no creditor can touch the Canadian Forces pension. You have the Old Age Security Act, Section 36 says nobody can touch the old age. You have the Employment Insurance Act, Section 42 saying that you can't touch that. Now you have the Public Service Superannuation Act, Section 10, brackets 10, that says you can't touch that. Now, then the government wants to save money, and then it ignores its law. Okay? Now, that's insane. The government wrote the law. Why should it break the law? Okay? We should be able to expect the government to respect its own law. I'm not preaching to the silence here. Hopefully everybody agrees. It is much worse for the government to break the law than us. If we break the law, we're an ordinary citizen. We didn't write it. But if they break the law, they're our representative. We voted in there. And then they made a law, and then they fucking broke it. There's a rule of law principle for a reason. And we need the rule of law to be established, to be reestablished. We need Prime Minister Trudeau to realize that we foundation thing. To put anything into that and have government money going to that with his family involved, he should realize that is an objective, very easy bias. You can't act like that, and they should have enough sense not to do it in the first place. Now, tell me that's not true, right? He went to that island trip. I don't hate Trudeau, but I don't like what he does. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt when he first got in. He was sunny days and all that stuff, and I wanted to believe he could be better than Harper. Now I think he's a figurehead, and I always believe the government's being run by the bureaucrats. But he ought to have enough sense to stay out of things like the blackface thing. I mean, he might have been young, whatever, but twice, and how come he got elected after that? I mean, I didn't want Andrew Scheer, but the thing is, I mean, blackface should have sunk his campaign. There are so many things going wrong. We're not as bad as the States, but we're getting there, which is why I'm making these videos. I want to put the brakes on this shit, okay? I want them to stop. We need to stand up for our rights, because nobody else is going to stand up for them. And I try to think of something I was going to mention about my insurance. I'll leave you with this again about my own personal situation. Unlike the military, the public service has a leave without pay policy, that if you're disabled and you go on Sun Life, you can be on that, 2 to 5 years. And then if you're too sick to come back to work, you got to retire, but they let you have a leave without pay policy. So at 3 years, they said to me, you got to go. So I bought back my time under the Public Service Superannuation Act because I wasn't making contributions during that leave without pay period. So I ended up paying about $130 a month off of my pension to buy back that time. Now, last night I came to this epiphany. It might have been night 4. Okay, I get Sun Life insurance. During the period I was on Sun Life insurance, I bought back the time I was on the period while I was on the Sun Life insurance, which I still am. So the increase in my pension for buying back the pension, because it gave me more pensionable service, resulted in a higher pension. But the higher pension gets deducted by Sun fucking Life. I don't like to make mistakes. Buying back my pension for nothing pisses me off. Not only that, but Sun Life then ordered me to get the Canada Pension Plan, and then, because I ended up owing money to them because they said I had $9,800 in a bridging amount, I ended up paying another $130 a fucking month to them. So I think this needs to be looked into on the public service side. I think that it's a very clear, obvious case of bias, where if I buy back my time and then I lose the value of it, I don't get no goddamn benefit. Exactly the same thing about the flat rate. Exactly the same thing about the Canadian Forces pension. What benefit does the soldier, the veteran, get when they get their Canadian Forces pension and it's promptly taken off of the Manulife policy, or it's promptly taken off the income replacement benefit? What the fuck are they doing when they're trying to give us a certain amount, but along the way they're not giving us our things that we're supposed to get? Okay? How fucking weird is the world these days that they think this is okay? You are supposed to get what you pay for. Now that's what I was telling a veteran in Ontario, Dan Slack, there yesterday when I was talking to him, and I kept it only 18 minutes. I said, Dan, you're supposed to get what you paid for. He was in the military 25 years, 26 I think, and he paid in an assisted policy. And then they should not have deducted his pension, act pension from it, and then he would have got his insurance because they didn't reduce the payment. It goes back to a consolidated Bathurst 1979 Supreme Court of Canada case, and the quote that I clued in on was, the insurer is not permitted to pocket the premiums without risk of having to pay the insurance. Think about that, because that's what clawbacks do. And I'm going to sign off on that, and thanks for watching again, and have a good weekend, people.